This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Natalie Sideserf here, Sideserf Cake Studio, and I'm going to show you how I made a tiki drink cake. Here I have a paper umbrella that I'm going to make an edible version of, starting with the paper. First thing I do is I wet some edible wafer paper, and then I very gently place it onto the real paper umbrella. Now I know that this edible umbrella is going to be insanely fragile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two umbrellas. There's a pink one and a yellow one. That way, when I inevitably break one of them, I have a backup. Once the wafer paper is on, I just use a brush to work it into all those creases. So now I'm gonna set those umbrellas aside to dry, and while I wait, let's start working on the cake. Here I have some cake that I cut into 2.5-inch circles, and I'm stacking them between layers of chocolate ganache. I put a dowel through the top of the cake, which will act as a handle while I ice the outside. And it also keeps the cake from tipping over. Then I apply a layer of chocolate ganache on the outside of the cake, and I smooth it out using a bench scraper or a bendable scraper. Then I cover the cake in a layer of brown modeling chocolate, which tastes a lot like a Tootsie Roll. And then it is on to the fun part. It's time to sculpt. This tiki cup is basically a mix of a bunch of tiki designs that I found online. While I was searching, I found out that there is a whole culture surrounding tiki drinks. Back in 1934, a Texan who went by the name Don the Beachcomber returned home from the Caribbean with a whole new attitude and a brand new idea. So that's when he opened the world's first tiki bar called Don the Beachcomber Cafe in Hollywood. So he is credited with starting the whole tiki culture boom. The fad became super popular in the 1940s and 50s. A lot of it is based around Polynesian art and just a general laid-back island vibe. Usually tiki drinks are made with lighter dark rum, flavored syrups, and fruit juices. And in my experience, they're usually pretty strong. I love them. But I am also not very big, so I gotta take it easy when I have them. The Mai Tai is one of the most famous tiki drinks. The first one was made in Oakland, California, and it got its name when the owner of a bar called Trader Vic's made the drink for some guests that were visiting from Tahiti. They liked the drink so much that they responded with the phrase, Mai Tai Roa A, which I'm sure I pronounced wrong. But in Tahitian, that means very good. Thus, the Mai Tai was born. For me, 2 Mai Tai tikis, and I am not just tipsy. I'm toast. So the cake is sculpted and the wafer paper on the umbrellas is dry, so that means it's time to paint. Before we move on, I just want to take a moment to tell you about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I'm a cake decorator, not a web designer, so that's why I love Squarespace. Squarespace makes it easy to create beautiful websites quickly and easily, so people like me can spend less time learning to code and more time doing what we love. Templates make it super easy to get the look you want, and the Squarespace members area provides ways for your website to earn more revenue. Squarespace can also help collect donations using popular payment processors like PayPal, Venmo, and Stripe. To get started, head to squarespace.com right now for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/sideserf to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or a domain. I'm starting with the yellow umbrella, and I'm just using watered down food color and a small paintbrush to paint that design. An unexpected bonus about using the real paper umbrella to create my edible umbrella is that I can just trace that floral design that I can see through. So much easier. I did not plan that, but it's gonna save me a lot of time. Once I finish painting, I'll just trim away the excess wafer paper, and then I'll peel away the real umbrella from the edible one. Sculpting the tiki cup is fairly simple. I just get my brush nice and saturated with color, and then I work it into all those marks I sculpted. I'm taking a wet paper towel and I'm wiping away the surface food color. That leaves behind the food color that seeped into the creases. And back to the parasol. So to make the interior spines, I've rolled out some modeling chocolate really thin, and then I cut them into itty bitty strips. The spines on the real parasols are made of very thin cardboard, so I'm doing my best to get that modeling chocolate the same thickness and length. To get these pieces of modeling chocolate to stick to the wafer paper, I'm brushing a little bit of water onto the wafer paper, and then I very carefully press that modeling chocolate onto the parasol. Then I go around with my trusty stork scissors and I trim up the edges. For this parasol stem, I take a piece of fondant and I roll it into a very small coil, about the size of a toothpick, and then I let it dry overnight. Yes, you heard correctly. I used fondant rather than my go-to, which is modeling chocolate. That's because fondant will dry firm. Modeling chocolate dries a little bit soft, not nearly as firm as the fondant, so fondant is definitely a better choice for an edible toothpick. Before we assemble, I have a few finishing touches to add. So I pour some melted white chocolate into the top of the tiki cup, and I'm going to make some ice and a straw as well. For the straw, I take an extruder, I crank out a piece of modeling chocolate, and I shape it into a bendy straw using my sculpting tools. Here I have some gelatin that I'm breaking up with a fork. And as you probably know, I love using gelatin. I have some other videos showing you how I make my gelatin, so I'll put some links to those in the description. Now let's assemble. First I add the edible straw, then the edible toothpick with a small drop of melted chocolate on the end, and then I carefully place my edible parasol right on top. I went with yellow because guess what? I broke the pink one. I knew I'd break it. I am so proud of this little edible parasol. It is completely edible. The whole thing, it's so cute. And last, let's add the crushed gelatin ice. And there you have it, a 100% edible tiki drink cake. Now let's cut it. You know I'm dying to take a bite out of this parasol. I gotta do it. This moment is the highlight of my cake career. I'm so proud of this little umbrella. Excuse me, parasol.